Start with a song that was inspired by the Republican debates, which I'm sure inspired you all as well. I turned on my TV, though it was hard to see these men who would be head of state. What a great country from sea to shining sea. We watched the Republicans debate. Newt stood with his third wife and said, "You bet your life the president is a red. He wants to tax the rich a lot, take your limo and your yacht. He wants to have the bankers' heads. And if he gets in again, he'll paint the White House pink, and then he'll hire Chavez as his VP. Then we'll be right on track to give capitalism the sack, along with the insurance industry. If only it were true, if only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't you? If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true." It's a sing-along. They're all sing-alongs, by the way. Of course, you have to know the song first in order for it to really be a sing-along, so they may or may not actually be sing-alongs, but feel free. He'll give everyone food stamps and wheelchair ramps. He'll subsidize windmills and maple syrup. He'll cripple industries with eco-friendly policies, and pretty soon we will be just like Europe. He'll shut down oil wells, give out solar cells to every home in Delaware and Illinois. He'll ban logging in the parks. He'll send the works of Karl Marx to the homes of every American girl and boy. He'll abolish pesticides. He'll be giving out free rides and free lunches too in his high-speed trains. He'll start lots of public works full of union perks. He'll fill all the cities up with bicycle lanes. If only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't you? If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true. Watch out, his critics tell, this shall be our death knell. He'll pull the troops out and end all of our wars. He'll gut military spending, our empire will be ending, and soon we'll be invaded by the Moors. He'll legalize all drugs, give away beer mugs and hookahs to every child, and Korans. He'll ban religions from the schools, give 40 acres and a mule to every person who makes less than 50 grand. He'll close Guantanamo to torture, he'll say no. He'll make us all drive electric cars. He'll reinstate the fairness doctrine, take off that damn flag pin, and he'll put Rupert Murdoch behind bars. If only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't you? If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true. If only it were true, if only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't you? If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true. The event at that church in Portland was it was a Palestine-related conference, and so I kind of thought that we could safely denounce U.S. imperialism, because it's kind of hard to be in favor of Palestinian sovereignty and not have some kind of a critique of U.S. foreign policy, but then I got an email from somebody saying I was saying so many bad things about his homeland, being the United States, and but he didn't get into any specifics, though. That's the thing about these emails. Sometimes they don't tell you what you actually said that was offensive. Although swearing, that was offensive. That was easy. I could, I got that. I know what the swear words are. But as Mark Twain said, loyalty. What did he say anyway? Loyalty to the loyalty to the people, always loyalty to the government when it deserves it. Which it did deserve for at least 2 years in the 1860s, I think. Republicans were in power. This is a true story from the first time the U.S. invaded Mexico. It's a sing-along too. You might know it, some of you. One of you, two, three. My name is John Riley. I'll have your ear only a while. I left my dear home in Ireland. It was death, starvation, or exile. When I got to America, it was my duty to go. Enter the army and slog across Texas to join in the war against Mexico. And it was there in the pueblos and hillsides that I saw the mistake I had made. Part of a conquering army with the morals of a bayonet blade. And there amidst all these poor dying Catholics, screaming children, the burning stench of it all, myself and 200 Irishmen decided to rise to the call. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. We marched beneath the green flag of St. Patrick, emblazed with Erin Cobra. Right with the harp and the shamrock and Libertad Republica. Just 50 years after Wolf Tone, 5,000 miles away, the Yanks called us a legion of strangers, and they can talk as they may. But from Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We fought them in Matamoros, where their volunteers were raping the nuns. In Monterrey and Cerro Gordo, we fought on as Ireland's sons. We were the red-headed fighters for freedom, amidst these brown-skinned women and men. Side by side, we fought against tyranny, and I dare say we'd do it again. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. Was the last. Overwhelmed by the cannons from Boston, we fell after each mortar blast. Most of us died on that hillside at the service of the Mexican state. So far from our occupied homeland, we were heroes and victims of fate. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. So they started drilling for oil here in Oklahoma a long time ago.
100 years or something. And then they started drilling for oil in a lot of other places. But they didn't do a study. Scientists were never... I didn't realize this until reading a book by a scientist, but scientists don't get to actually do what they want to do almost ever. Like, they have to get paid to do it. And so a lot of stuff that somebody doesn't want to pay you to do doesn't get researched. And for some strange reason, nobody wanted to ever pay scientists to research how toxic oil is. So it wasn't until 1993 that a study was done on the toxicity of oil. And certain assumptions were made that it wasn't particularly toxic. Who knows why they would make these assumptions, but this is the incident in Alaska that led to the study being done. Spent $1 billion. I am a fisherman, so were my parents. Here in Cordova, on Prince William Sound, I'm not a tree hugger, but I love the mountains. And hauling in the gill net with the ocean all around, life was good here. You could raise a family with 100,000 tons of herring sent out every year. 1989, the tanker grounded. Nothing's ever been the same around here. Senator Stevens said, not one drop of oil would spill on Alaska's shores, and if it happened, it would be cleaned up. But our beaches were still covered, as was the ocean floor. 4 years passed, each rod collapsed. It was then we knew for sure the herring weren't coming back. Exxon's promises of compensation were about as empty as a used-up paper sack. It was August 20th, 1993, when we fishermen decided something must be done. We packed some groceries, we made some banners, headed out to Valdez Narrows beneath the midnight sun. 100 vessels took to the water, pushed through a storm and to the Valdez Sea. We lined up our boats, formed a blockade, and we waited for whatever might be. It was a sight to see there in the twilight of the day. We saw it turning. We all cheered and cried as tanker after tanker after tanker turned away. A Coast Guard gunship from Seattle would take 3 days to get up to the Sound. We held the line till then we went back home to Cordova, to this hallowed oiled ground. I am a fisherman, so were my parents. Here in Cordova, on Prince William Sound. So another thing the guy said at the church was that I was talking about myself too much. And but I do that. It's sort of talking about, I don't know.
Well, there's not a lot like you, David.
I like to tell stories about what's been happening, you know, and then that ends up involving me, you know. So.
Well, we know what we're doing, so we want to know what you're doing.
You know, that's right. Yeah, that was like kind of a
Stupid thing.
stupid.
Learn a lot of history. I always learn a lot of history whenever I listen.
That's what you need to tell stories about history, recent and less recent. And very recent history, New Zealand passed a law giving the government of New Zealand the freedom to spy on its own citizens, which they were already doing. So these laws that are passed after the government's doing something, that's always helpful, because then it's legal. Retroactively, apparently, I guess. And so right while this debate was happening in Parliament in New Zealand, I was trying to get into New Zealand, which didn't work. And it was like largely my fault for not having a work permit. But but if you're from the U.S., you don't need a permit to get into New Zealand. We're on the visa waiver program. So supposedly they should let you into the country anyway, and then tell you, oh, you can't work here, you know. But at least you should be able to be a tourist there theoretically. But I got a phone call at the airport in Japan from somebody from New Zealand who said you can't come in, and I couldn't come in because they had been reading my blog. It's made me feel very, very important. And, I should be gigging in New Zealand now, but I'm not. I'm stuck at Narita instead. I should be singing in the meat and smoking kiwi pot and chilling with the kiwi Reds. But when I showed up at the airport to board my flight, I was handed somebody's cell phone. Suddenly the future didn't look so bright, and I entered the twilight zone. The woman on the line said, "Hello, I'm from immigration. You may have a ticket, but you can't go to our great island nation." I felt like I'd been hit in the face with a big old kiwi log. But then I felt the Stasi's cold embrace when she said, "I've been reading your blog. The spies are reading my blog, the introduction and the prologue. And if that's so, it just might be true that they're watching this video too." Well, I normally don't get many views, a few hundred friends and kooks. So it comes as surprising news that some of them are Kiwi spooks. I try to get my missives out and start some small commotion. Someone's listening now, there's no doubt, across the South Pacific Ocean. The spies are reading my blog, the introduction and the prologue. And if that's so, it just might be true that they're watching this video too. "Were you strip searched in Trondheim?" she asked. "What kinds of things do you smoke? Have you ever been charged with a crime? Are you rich or are you broke? Have you ever been turned away from any borders you tried to cross? What kind of venues did you plan to play? Do you use dental floss?" I said, "It seems a bit unusual for you to do things quite this way." I asked her, "Is this normal?" But she wouldn't say, she'd just repeat her message. "At Narita you shall remain. I've read your blog, each vital passage, and you may not board that plane. The spies are reading my blog, the introduction and the prologue. And if that's so, it just might be true that they're watching this video too. They're watching this video too."
How long ago was that? Like,
Oh, that was just last,
Yeah.
what, 2 months ago now?
They almost didn't let him into Australia as well.
Yes,
The
yes,
Kiwis made themselves look so silly.
I applied for, so from Japan I applied for a visa to Australia, which you do need, although we're on the list of countries where you apply for a visa to Australia and they usually grant it to you within seconds. And it says that on the website, like if you're from the US, Canada, Britain, etc., you should be probably getting your visa in about 5 seconds, as soon as you just give us $25. And so, so I did that, and then a few seconds went by, I get this message back that says, "In some very rare cases, people from the United States do not get a visa within seconds. You are one of these cases." And it says, then it says, "Do not contact immigration because nothing will change." What is this? You can't come in and you can't talk to us about it. And so then I applied for a work visa, which is a different visa, so you can apply for that one. And I was planning on doing that from within Australia, which is perfectly legal. I've done it before, but this time I did it from outside the country, from Japan, and then I did get the work visa. And so I got in, and no idea if a Green Parliament member talking to the immigration minister had anything to do with me getting the visa. It could have just had nothing to do with that. But I got in, and then one of the people organizing my gates in near Canberra, the capital, happens to work as an accountant for immigration for Australia, and I guess the immigration department, the accounting department for immigration, and various other departments are in the same building. So one of her colleagues was walking past the war crimes department, and I don't know what the Australian war crimes department does, but I mean,
Nobody knows.
but there's an Australian war crimes department. And he was walking past it, and as he's walking past, he happens to hear that they're talking about me. They're writing my name down on a board, spelling my last name. You know, you heard them. So I don't know what that was about, but a lot of these things you'll just never know. But anyway, back to Oklahoma. There's a lot of fracking going on around here, and you know, as you probably know, the brightest spot on the U.S. map is now North Dakota. At night, if you look at a satellite map of the U.S., it is no longer New York City; it is North Dakota. And there's a lot of jokes that can be made about that, and I'm not going to make any. I found out in New Zealand that people from places that don't have many people are very sensitive about that. And you're not. And then if you make any references to like a state that doesn't have very many people in it, then they think you're an elitist from New York. So, which I am, but you know, I'll just leave it at that. And they need housing in North Dakota, though. They have a housing crisis, right? There's all these people fracking and with nowhere to live. That's a weird contradiction to be in. You got a good job, but you got nowhere for you to live. There's an oil boom. Prairies are on fire. Shale gas. All fuel you might desire coming out so fast. No time to lay pipeline, Eurekaville. It's like the days of 49, except this time they're using massive rigs that poison everything more thoroughly. The deeper that it digs, trains a mile long. Loaded up in rail cars, send them west, send them east. Past cafe schools, late night bars, there's an oil train coming to your town. There were dangers, they knew this from the start, but they were minimal, they said, and everyone must play their part and risk the destruction of their cities. Each time a train rolls by, hope it won't derail and detonate sky high. There's an accident each day somewhere, but we're not supposed to fear that it could happen here. Listen closely, do you hear that whistle blow? Look out the window, do you see the fire glow? There's an oil train coming to your town. It was after midnight, on a Saturday night, a resident called in that a rail car was alight with that much gas. Sitting by the lake, it was no one's job to watch the car that maintained the brake on 73 massive tanks of fracking gas down the hill, gaining speed as they rolled past. Now at the Music Cafe that once was on Rue Frontenac, there are 50 customers and employees who won't be coming back. There's an oil train coming to your town. There's an oil train coming to your town. So I think oftentimes, though, that the left or the progressives or whatever we call this disparate movement of people who are concerned about the world going to hell, we're often our own worst enemy. And I know you were talking about Cindy Sheehan, and one story I remember painfully well from Camp Casey in Crawford was was it had gotten started, and of course the word was getting out all over the place about this happening, and people were coming from all over the country and the world to camp out in Texas in August, which is generally a really bad idea. But and there was one guy from Oklahoma, young guy from Oklahoma, who I heard about, who went down to Crawford, and he was I don't know where in Oklahoma he was from, but he was not necessarily part of the peace movement. It was all new to him. He was hearing about it on the mainstream media, which for some strange reason was actually covering it for a month. And he went down, he drove his car down to Crawford, and after a very, very long drive, got out of his car, and he, as soon as he got out of his car, he heard some young folks there camped out talking about how it was such a bummer that Crawford was in a dry county and there was no alcohol available for like 50 miles. And so he thought he'd be a good Samaritan, and he got back in his car and he drove to the nearest county line and bought a case of beer and drove back to Camp Casey, took the beer out of his trunk, and then these same people that were complaining that it was a dry county started complaining that he had bought non-union beer. And I thought, it's good to at some point out that there's this thing called labor unions, and it's nice if you buy union beer because the workers get paid better, etc. But there are times and places to mention these things, and that was not it. And you're trying to welcome somebody into a movement. You don't start out by criticizing them for buying the wrong kind of beer.
I don't drive a car because I run on gas, but if I did, it'd run on biomass. I ride a bike, or sometimes a skateboard. So piss off all you drivers and your yucky hordes, sitting all day in the traffic queues. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't eat meat, I just live on molten chives or the donuts that I found in last week's dumpster dives. Well, you people in that restaurant, I think you are so sad when you could have been eating bagels like the ones that I just had. I think it is a shame all the bourgeois things you do. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't wear leather, and I like my clothes in black, and I made a really cool hammock from a moldy coffee sack. I like to hop on freight trains, I think that is so cool. It's so much funner doing this than being stuck in school. I can't believe you're wearing those brand new shiny shoes. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't have sex, and there will be no sequel, because heterosexual relationships are inherently unequal. I'll just keep on moshing to a deflagging grass until there are no differences in gender, race, or class. All you brainwashed breeders, you just haven't got a clue. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't believe in leaders, I think consensus is the key. I don't believe in stupid notions like representative democracy. Whether or not it works, I know it is the case that only direct action can save the human race. So when I see you in your voting booth, then I know it's true. I'm a better anarchist than you. I am not a pacifist, I like throwing bricks, and when the cops have caught me and I've taken a few licks, I always feel lucky if I get a bloody nose, because I feel so militant and everybody knows. By the time the riot is all through, I'm a better anarchist than you. I'm a better anarchist than you.
So Paul Watson and the Sea Shepherd folks are in court in Seattle, and they're trying to get $500,000 out of them, and for piracy. And there's when I was in Australia just recently, I was hanging out with some of the Sea Shepherd folks in their new boat, which ironically was made in Japan. And now that with this wonderfully beautifully made boat that comes actually complete with rice storage lockers and all sorts of useful things that they often don't come with if they're not made in Japan. And now they're going to go off to Antarctica and try to interfere with the Japanese whaling fleet. And
Hobart to Antarctica, so close but so far from Australia, where watchful eyes are always peeled, 'cause you never know when there's a growler below. Watchful eyes peeled for predators and prey, when all you can do is whatever you can to keep the hunt at bay. The time is coming, and it's coming soon, when we'll stand between you and that harpoon. The tide is unforgiving, the sea floor is a grave, for those capsized before us fell beneath the waves. Perhaps we'll join them by accident or not, gale or a storm or a well-placed shot. But we'll steer around the ice and right into their sights. Everyone must pick their battles, this is our fight. So here beneath the Southern Cross and the crescent moon, we'll stand between you and that harpoon. There's just a little space, but that's where we can see your face. Look into your eyes and hear you sing. You come to realize you have to do something. Sometimes all you can do is do your best and hope that someone else will do the rest. So once again we'll spend this afternoon standing between you and that harpoon. So my next CD is going to be called If I Had a Hammer, and because I figure you can, more than one person can write a song with that title. And if I was asking around for suggestions for the cover of the thing, and a friend of mine sent a graphic he made that had it was like a picture of a Soviet flag, red with a yellow sickle, but without the hammer. That could be. It's like a bit of an inside joke. Who remembers the Soviet flag? But a friend of mine from Brisbane was talking about a case that was in the courts a couple months ago, and involving a couple of guys from Queensland, Australia, who walked onto a military base. Well, the U.S. and Australia were conducting what they call war games, and these folks had not long before seen the video that Private Manning released to WikiLeaks of the helicopter in Baghdad killing journalists and children, and they thought they could try to do their part with a sledgehammer, and then somebody who heard that song was walking down a path, and I ran into it. He stopped me and he said, 10 million people with sledgehammers could change everything. And that is absolutely true. I'm all for low-tech solutions. Trade Facebook in for sledgehammers any day.
watched it on the TV. Machine guns fired towards the ground. I watched the people run. Helicopter gunship strafing the street. Watched them lining up the bodies in the Baghdad heat. They say these leaks have consequences. I must agree. I saw them fire on the children. It affected me. I thought, what if I were wearing the other shoe? If I had a hammer, what would I do? I am just a person, like anyone. I am just another mother's son. I have no special powers. I cannot fly, not like that helicopter gunship up in the sky, sending all those bullets all around to the journalists and children on the ground. I am just one man, that's very true. But if I had a hammer, what would I do? Sometimes I try to wonder, why should I care? But then the answer seems so obvious. There are people down there. Right here in Queensland, there's an army base. There's a helicopter gunship just sitting in place. There's a time for watching. There's a time to act. It's just gonna kill more children if it remains intact. I'm just one person, but you are too. And if you had a hammer, what would you do? If you had a hammer, what would you do? Okay, I'm going to do one more song and then we'll take a little break and then I'll do it all over again. Different songs. And there's things to snack on and there's CDs and an email list and all sorts of excitement very nearby. And I'll do a song. This song was specifically mentioned as a song that was inappropriate to do in church, so I'll do this. Politics makes for all sorts of entertainment. It usually leads to, things not changing or getting worse, it seems. But at least, the process is entertaining, hopefully. And there was some. When I was touring recently in Australia, they were having an election, and then I got to Germany, and they were having an election there, and it was all. It was the German election was less exciting than the one before, because the one before actually see, I do tell stories about myself all the time. Actually, this was when I got in the news in Germany a little bit. I was a Frankfurter Allgemeine as a terrorist sympathizer, but it was about the spokesperson of the Pirate Party, a guy named Christian Hufgott, who was on the hot seat because he had organized a gig for me, and because of that he was guilty by association for knowing a terrorist sympathizer, and there was no evidence presented about why I'm a terrorist sympathizer, but in any case, apparently I am. And so Christian was on the hot seat for refusing to denounce me as a terrorist sympathizer. And basically his principled position was that he believed in freedom of expression, which is one of the main Pirate Party things. You know, they're big into freedom of expression, and so so at least he didn't get kicked out of the Pirate Party, and they maintained him in the position of spokesperson. And on this last election, I did not enter into the debate at all. Although the Pirate Party didn't do as well as they did before that, so maybe it could have helped if I was part of the. But in Australia, probably the most exciting thing that happened it was just horrible, the whole thing. The two criminal organizations, basically, both of whom want to and continue. Both of them have a long history of breaking international law and sending refugees back to their deaths. Much like other countries, but there was one woman running for office for a right-wing party in Queensland who said that she did not mind Islam as a country. She had to drop out of the race. She said other really stupid things too, and that just apparently there's levels of stupidity you cannot sink beneath before. But of course, New York. I think New York City, the mayoral race in New York City was probably the most entertaining. All of them. This is when they. If you were listening to this song on This American Life, which you never will, but on This American Life, which is a wonderful show, which will never have me on, I suspect. But they would say at this point, warning, this next 5 minutes mentions the existence of sex. It's not like there's any real dirty words in it, but it mentions the existence of sex. I like those warnings. Anthony Weiner takes pictures of his wiener and sends them off to lots of women that he's never met. Normally I wouldn't care about some guy's pubic hair, except in this case it's a politician. We can hopefully soon forget. He wants to make New Yorkers proud and show he's very well endowed to be the mayor of the city from which he sends his tweets. He's a good Democrat. He'll go up to bat for the people of New York and the random women that he greets. Anthony Weiner's a wiener. These days it's all the rage. To find out more about his wiener, just take a peek at the front page. I probably wouldn't give a shit about his adolescent wit, whether he was sexting after he resigned from Congress or before. I may not like his style as he issues his denial, but what really bugs me is he voted for the war. Anthony Weiner's wiener. These days it's all the rage. To find out more about his wiener, just take a peek at the front page. Now that it's the second scandal, maybe we can pull the handle and send Anthony and his wiener down some flushing drain and await the politician next, who will send a penile text. One vile politician down, but far too many still remain. Anthony Weiner's wiener. These days it's all the rage. To find out more about his wiener, just take a peek at the front page.